Welcome back to this week's episode of Made for Mexico. TIM, this is Mexico, and I am Brent May. This is the show where we help you discover if you are made for Mexico. Now today, we have a very special guest. We're bringing a dear friend of mine and what I would call a Huatulco food empress, Jane Bauer. Jane has a collection of food-related businesses. I'd say she's also an OG pioneer as a Canadian, one of us who've moved to Mexico a long time ago. She's got a lot of history here. Some might say an expat. We like to say we're immigrants to this beautiful country. So welcome, Jane Bauer.
Thank you, Brent. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's really love to have you on the show. And it's almost hard to really think about where I should be starting with you because, you know, I've known you for so long and you've been in Mexico for so long. There's so many things we can talk about. You have a restaurant business, you have a catering business, you have village to table dinners, salt business, a magazine. So it's just, you know, all of these things, you're really, truly an inspiration for so many people, Jane. So, you know, I quite adore you as a friend. I look up to you as an entrepreneur and love you as an ally.
Thank you so much.
So I guess, you know, a question you probably get a lot or people want to know whether you're willing to share it or not, but like, how did you get started in this Mexico life, Jane?
So, Brent, you know, that's my least favorite question ever. And when people say, how did you get here? I die a little bit inside because it's a story that, yeah, I think people already have an idea of what they want to hear. The truth is, I didn't know anything about Mexico. I came traveling with some friends prior to graduating from university. And I just wanted to have a good time. Mexico, in the beginning of the trip, didn't make that much of an impression on me. And then I ended up sort of towards the end of the trip in a very small village. And in that village, I encountered two women and two little girls just sitting there. And I had this overwhelming urge. It sounds really woo-woo. I was just like, I want to talk to these women. And I want to here, they live here. People just live here, sitting on the beach and, you know, going fishing and growing corn. And it just, it really spoke to me, having come from a very urban, affluent, academic background, to want to explore that. And so I went home and I told everyone I'm going to go back to this little village, and they were pretty surprised. And I did. I went back with no idea. I think people think that there's one moment that you decide to make your life in a place, or they do a lot of planning. There was just not a moment where I was like, oh, I'm leaving. So I came and just said, oh, I'm just going to stay here and see how it goes. And that's what I'm still doing, seeing how it's going.
Day by day, right?
Day by day.
And so just for some context, after university, you're about 22 years old? Yeah,
22. Yeah. And I've been studying, specifically, I had been studying women's studies and cultural studies and focusing on it's called post-colonial theory. So pretty boring in the context of a classroom. But once you start to see it in action and start to understand the context of, you know, village life in Mexico, it became thrilling. It really made everything that I've been studying come to life and have meaning for me. So that was really important.
And that was back in, where were you studying?
That was in 1997. It was in the first village I lived was Mazunte, but that was before Mazunte was. I kind of cringe too to say Mazunte because it's so different now.
It's so different, yeah.
At the time, there was like one light bulb. You know, it was a bit of a destination for backpackers from Mexico City.
Right.
But definitely
like super real traveling people. Like there was no trendiness about it.
Even people that were staying in Cipolite were like, oh, Mazunte, like that's too much, you know? And so, yeah, and I ended up going back, and those women and the two little girls were still sitting in the same spot. And I just kept showing up every day with this family. And they eventually like built me this little cabin with a sand floor, and I just kept hanging out with them and hanging out with kids, learning to speak Spanish. I didn't speak a word of Spanish.
Oh.
So hanging out with kids, learning to speak Spanish, and trying to just understand, like, what is it that makes life here flow and tick?
Right. And then home, where did you come from?
I came from Montreal.
Montreal. And that's where you're going to university as well.
That's where I went to McGill.
Right.
And which isn't far from where I grew up. I grew up in Westmount. Yeah.
Okay. So at 22, you spent like 6 months down here, or a few months, or how?
No, I spent until now.
Well, okay, but I thought you had went home and studied some more or something like that.
No, I came. The first trip was 5 weeks with my friends. Spent 3 hours at this village. I went home and finished school, and then came back, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, well, I thought there was a story you told me one time about speaking Spanish and going back and studying Spanish.
Well, we went back when my daughter, Frances, who you know, was 3. We went back to Montreal just for 6 weeks in the summer. It wasn't like a move or anything. And I went. Do you want me to tell the story?
Sure.
So I had never taken an official like Spanish class, and I went to take a class at my alma mater, and I did a placement test. I placed really high, and I was really happy. And I walked into the classroom, and the teacher was Mexican. I think he was from Aguascalientes. And he was talking to everyone, and he saw me, and pretty girl. He's smiling at me, and then I opened my mouth and started speaking Spanish, and his face just dropped, and he said, where did you learn to speak Spanish? Oaxaca? He said it with such disdain. And so having only learned to speak Spanish in one context for me, like, I think it's the equivalent I always say of like someone learning to speak English in like some podunk town in Texas, you know, and they open their mouth and it's not what you expect.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Because you could basically learn street Spanish.
Yeah, like it was very much like, well, it wasn't even street. It was like village Spanish.
Right.
It's like, where's the machete?
Right.
Go get the wood. Let's go fishing. But like, you know, a little village slang to it.
Right. So then from Mazunte, you moved to another little village.
Yeah. So then I got married, and I married someone who's born and raised in Puerto Angel, which is just 15 minutes away, but a world away. And I lived there for close to a decade, being married and living in a little fishing village. Yep. Yeah. You mentioned you had a daughter. Yep. Yeah. What was life like in Puerto Angel, or Porto Angel, as any
as
English
you like
speaker
to say. Would say it?
As Brent likes to say,
everyone
Puerto Angel. Puerto Angel. Yeah. I mean, it's a real fishing village, and it was good. I mean, there's a real network there of community, and my husband's family was there. He's Mexican American, so part of his family's American, and so it was a really nice balance for us. And I would say I had my daughter, was basically a stay-at-home mom, and there's so much community when you're a stay-at-home mom and raising kids that, for instance, friends of mine, let's say in Canada or the U.S., when they were even just on mat leave later on, you know, isolation was a really big thing.
Right.
So for me as a woman, to feel that sense of community, I wouldn't say I often had moments where I felt like alone.
Right.
With a new baby. Like, I was around other women and other kids, and I felt supported, and so that was pretty amazing.
It was a real extension of family.
Yeah. I mean, it's just people live outside. People are so willing to help. People are a lot less self-centered.
Right.
Individualistic.
Yeah. I was talking with my family too. Growing up in Landis, just the quality of growing up in a small town.
Yeah.
You know, it's really changed over time, and well, that's awesome. So you're living in a little village and got married, had a baby, raising your daughter.
Yeah.
And learning the Oaxacan life.
Yeah, doing a lot of cooking. Like, I could spend all day planning dinner. And, you know, I had a Julia Child cookbook from my dad, and I had a Moosewood cookbook, which is vegetarian food.
Right.
And, yeah, I loved going to the market and taking sort of things that I learned from friends here, their cooking methods, and sort of mixing it up. And food's always played a really important role in my life, and I would say my whole family growing up, food was central. Quality of food, where it's coming from, and the story behind food. So yeah, that extended to my married life, and was a great also way into a culture.
Right. Yeah. Well, life was simple and beautiful, and it's kind of ironic. We became such good friends, but Aaron and I moved to Puerto Angel ourselves. That was our first landing.
I know.
Place,
I could
right?
barely believe it when I met you in person.
Of all the places.
Well, of all the places, what are these people going to do there?
So yeah, we moved into a new condominium there and started selling real estate. And I remember at that time I was traveling to Puerto Escondido a lot more because my whole goal was to learn to surf. So we didn't have great waves around Puerto Angel. So going to Puerto lots, I remember meeting this guy, Dan. His Casa Dan. A lot of people know Casa Dan.
Of course.
So he's like, oh, yeah, you're in Puerto Angel. He's like, oh, do you know this Jane Bauer? And I was like, no, I don't know Jane Bauer. He's like, oh, yeah, she's got this magazine and she's got a restaurant. And I guess by this time you were living in Huatulco, but he knew you. Sure. He knew you from out there.
Well, Dan, he's a fixture, and I'm so flattered that he would know my name.
Oh yeah,
and was aware of me. I know his daughter a little bit, and they're great people, and they've been in Escondido for so long. Yeah,
they started his first wife, or maybe only Carmen Cafecito, and then daughter's named Caitlin. They're beautiful people. So I used to stay at his Casa Dan hotel when I'd go up and surf, and we go early, surf, stay overnight, surf in the night, surf in the morning, go home. And anyway, he was asking if I knew you or met you, and telling me a little bit about you, and she's quite a looker too, Brent.
Oh, that's so nice.
So Aaron and I were intrigued to meet you, and then I think we eventually hired you for a little art real estate event we had.
Yeah. I think you reached out first for the magazine.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And you got a full page, which I was like, look at this guy taking a full page. The magazine was still pretty new, and I was so excited. And
Yeah. So you were already in Huatulco. We were living in Puerto Angel. So what was life like, kind of transitioning? You moved from this small village to, the big city of Huatulco.
The big city of Huatulco. It didn't have any traffic lights yet. Let's put it in perspective. There was no Chedraui yet. So it was, but it did feel like the big city compared.
Yeah.
But the schools were definitely better.
Right.
So for Frances, she started grade 1 in Huatulco, and it was good. I mean, it was the right time to make that move for us. And I would say, for school for her, and just more activities.
Yeah, so that was a big reason to move, was the schooling.
Yeah, school, and there's great schools in Huatulco, and there's also a lot of activities. So, she had tennis and swimming and golf growing up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she didn't really like golf. She only did a little bit, but I would go golfing. But there was just, more to do.
Yeah.
And I was, at that point, not thinking about working. Thankfully, didn't have to at that time. And so I was teaching yoga, for my own pleasure and, my own skill set. And then I liked Huatulco, but I didn't like it enough. For me, I realized very quickly that I missed more of that village life.
Right.
So I got a place on the other side of Huatulco, and I've had that house since then.
Okay.
So almost 20 years.
Oh, wow.
2007 is when I got my property. And I just always keep coming back to that village life, those girls on the beach, growing corn, and the simplicity of knowing how to find food, I think is really important.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Aaron and I spent about 2.5 years in Puerto Angel, and my heart is still out there. The Costa Chica de Oaxaca, you got La Mina, Puerto Angel, Senegasanillo, Mazunte, just every little beach has a uniqueness to it, its own little personality, but it's all just slow paced, an amazing feeling of freedom, I'd say, more than anywhere else I've been.
I think it's just so good to be in a space that supports slowing down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Huatulco is slow for most people, but compared to those villages, it can feel a little bit.
It's really the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. No, it's great. When I go out there, we, have more work out there now than we used to. But it feels like a little mini vacation every time I go out that way. And, one of our developments, the theme is slow living.
Yeah.
At Villas Baznaga. So okay, let's catch up to you now. So you're in Huatulco. This is where things started. The food empire started.
Well, I love that you use the word empire. It's barely an empire. I'm a girl who I always just say, number one, I sell food. And number two, I just make money off my hobbies. Like if I like to do something, I'm like, how can I find a way to do this more often? Yeah. And if I can make money off of it, then I feel very justified to do it more often. Yeah. So I think it was a natural progression. It's not the first. It's not like the idea of having a restaurant was new. It's something I had thought about a lot, even before coming to Mexico. Definitely something, as I mentioned, like my family, food is very, very important. I have an aunt who had a restaurant, and I saw her sort of build that up and do the planning stages. And I remember how excited she was. And I'd worked in restaurants, but always sort of front of house or bars. And so, yeah, it was just a natural extension of being with women in the kitchen, right, from the village. And so, yeah, like wanting to be in the kitchen and making food. Yeah, well,
sounds like for you, and I know this about you, it's a passion. It's a passion and work.
Yeah.
Passion project. And, as they say, if you enjoy what you do, you never really work a day in your life, right?
Yeah, and it's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
I agree.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to that, Jane.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Cafe Juanita.
Yep. So I opened. Opened it in 2008.
2008. Okay.
2008, and here we are, 2025, and since that day in 2008, we have the same team.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, like now that I just said that, is that right, the math? 2008, 2025? Yeah, so we've been doing that a long time. And wow. So I got what I wanted. I manifested hanging out with these women in the kitchen, and it's great.
That's unbelievable with the turnover so many restaurants have and businesses have. Oaxaca for so many is not an easy place to find talent. It's not an easy place to find loyalty. So that really says something about how you operate, Jane Bauer.
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate. They're amazing. And it is a hard market, I know, to have found. Like, there was a time we were looking for a new dishwasher for like 6 months.
Right.
But in general, I'm so lucky. Yeah. Yeah, as I see other businesses struggle with having, people stick around that much. Yeah. And it's exactly having that kind of team that allows me to do all the other things that I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know all your staff well, and they definitely always take good care of us. I remember Cafe Juanita when it was still in Santa Cruz. Once Aaron and I started transitioning from Puerto Angel to Huatulco, we were still living out there, and I started Bayside from our developer representation, and your restaurant was my office 3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah.
I'd come in and do showings, and then tag onto your internet and come have a sandwich and do some emails and maybe do another showing and drive all the way back to Puerto Angel. What a grind it was driving that windy road. But it's a big kind of part of our beginning and history of Bayside too. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I've loved seeing your business grow. Yeah. Like I remember when you guys were even just throwing around names and, it's so exciting to see people grow a business. Yeah.
Aaron and I were just, these two youngsters with laptops and popping them open and working from wherever we could. And it was a lot of fun. And so about that time-ish, I'd say, you also, I think, were realizing, this is kind of pre-Facebook groups, right? Like,
I think it was before Facebook groups.
I think Facebook was just starting, but nobody really knew what it was too much yet, or how was that? But I don't think their groups are happening yet.
No groups. And it was definitely before people were, like, businesses were so dependent on social media.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you had decided to start up a magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I had the restaurant, and for a while, like, there was a couple of restaurants and a bar and cooking classes that I started, and yoga. Like, I had also I opened a little yoga studio, and to promote any of these businesses within the hotels, which at the time Huatulco was very focused on all-inclusive, the all-inclusive market, and the only way to really reach them was these little pamphlets that the hotel agencies would sell you space in.
Right.
And it was crazy expensive.
Right.
I know at the time it was like $1,200 or something to have a little ad in this little flyer that they guaranteed they would hand out to every all-inclusive person coming off that plane.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, we got to try it. So we tried it, and nothing. Like, not one response. Never saw the flyer. Never anything. And coming from university, I had been in high school. I ran the newspaper as well. So I was like, I'm basically the same person I was in high school, just older. And I was like, what we really need is something more to foster more community. And so all I did was approach a few people I knew. And I was like, think we should start this magazine. Would you like to write some articles? And Huatulco's foreigner community was fairly small at that time, and so very close-knit. And for sure, 5 or 6 people were like, of course. They started writing articles. I approached a couple of businesses. I was like, this is how much it's going to cost. You want to put out an ad in this, then we can print it. And that's how it happened. Yeah. And another really big incentive for me was then I could promote my own business and get this magazine into the hotels, get into the hands of other people, and not be paying for my own advertising, but also connect community endeavors with people who have money, right? So people, ever since I moved here, they need money for sports equipment or for something for medical or scholarship for girls. Like, I'm pretty big in girls' education. And so it was a way to connect people to causes that might need help. Yeah. And it worked.
Yeah. Well, it's worked well. I remember you showing me from, like, I think it was your first magazine or borderline flyer. I believe it was 4 pages or something.
Yeah, it was like a newspaper format, like the New York Times book review. Yeah. Like, it was like long form and paper. And
I think there was 4 pages or something like that.
Yeah, 4 pages. Yeah. I mean, big pages, but yeah.
But they're big, but that was where you come from. And now you have a very beautiful magazine.
Thank you.
It's all color. Great articles. You have great writers working with you. Yeah. It's not just all fluffy, duffy pieces. You guys tackle some real issues. I love Randy Jackson, just to name, one guy, and not just him.
He's our investigative reporter. Well, I think because the people that write for us, they write about things they want to write about. Like, no one is like me with my advertising, but even as the editor, like, none of us who are writing or selling anything. We just want to educate ourselves and educate our readership. I think one of the things that struck me when I moved to Huatulco back then and had experiences with all-inclusive people who only came to Mexico and never stepped off the resort from fear or whatever, is just a lack of understanding of what Mexico's about. Yeah. So through the magazine, we wanted to show people, like, oh my God, this culture is phenomenal. Yeah. It's beyond burritos and tacos and margaritas. Like, there's so much more happening here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that, Jane.
Thank you.
I don't have to tell you, advertise a lot in your magazine, and it works for us. And, you're the largest English-speaking magazine in Oaxaca. I've had people call me from Oaxaca City that saw our ads and came down. And
amazing.
We're in I know you're in Puerto Escondido.
Yeah.
And of course here in Huatulco, it's everywhere.
Yeah. So we started with a hard copy and, of course, put it online. But to this day, we still have a huge hard copy distribution, which a lot of people are like, why do you print all these magazines? People love something they can touch and hold.
Yeah.
And even with that, we have over 10,000 readers a month online, which is great. But much more like people love to hold something. So I'm really happy that we can print something that people can tangible take with them. We have people who collect them. I know people who have a collection of every eye we've ever printed. And they'll go through and they'll be like, I'm missing issue 77. Do you know where I can find it?
Get one of those. Yeah, it's a collector's
and I'm
edition.
Like, I love that you care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we have them in every one of our vacation rental properties. So we're always restocking. I can't say we've got collections in all of our properties because people like to take them. Yeah.
As they should.
And I mean, I remember leaving them on planes and seeing them in planes and people putting in the little pockets. So, and I think, this sounds a little silly, but I think it's true. Just from an advertising perspective, there's something classy or maybe a little bit status when people are like, there's my development. I live there. And they see it being advertised in a magazine with a nicely done,
for sure,
artistic ad. So, I enjoy it. And I'll confess, I go through and look at all the ads first, and then I'll double back and read a few of the articles. So
good. That's okay.
Okay, you got the magazine rolling, and obviously your daughter Frances is with you in Huatulco, and what's the education system like, I guess? How is that with her? So how old would she have been about? So
she was born in 2000.
2000.
So I started the magazine in 2011. So she was 11. It's really easy to keep track of her age. And then she actually went to Canada for junior high because I wanted her to have that experience of life in Canada. And if she wanted to continue and go to university, I wanted that to be an option for her.
Sure.
And so, I was traveling a lot back and forth because we're pretty close to each other. And but it also gave me space to buckle down and focus on work. And when she came back, she went to high school here. And that was actually, she went to a private school here. Most of the kids, if the families can afford it, kids go to private school. And she then went to University in Mexico City.
Okay.
And she loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved it.
Well, beautiful city, Mexico City. And so she was started end of elementary, because I think you said 2008 you first moved in. And then... So
she started in Huatulco in elementary school in 2005.
2005.
She's 5, grade 1. She did grade 1 through 6.
Okay.
And then she went to Canada for 7, 8, 9 and was back here for
high school.
For 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
And then 5 years of university. The program was 5 years.
And if anybody with kids was to ask you about the education system in Mexico,
I always tell people it's great.
Yeah.
Your kids are going to learn anywhere.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest difference is that Canadian education really especially at the university level, really focuses on critical thinking. And Mexican education is a little more practical, a little more science-based, I would say, and by rote.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it's just a matter of every kid is different. And if there's something that they're not getting at school, you can always supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're good. Good life.
Yeah.
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 And so beyond the restaurant and the magazine, you also started a catering business that kind of was, I don't know if I say associated, but based out of your restaurant. And
yeah, I would say it's just an extension of the restaurant. But because if we're doing catering, we primarily focus on catering weddings because the money's better.
Right.
And actually, well, sometimes I say I hate weddings, but the truth is that's only the week before I have to do a wedding because I get so worried. Right. And when I'm actually in the wedding, all the couples that I work with have been amazing, except for one.
Oh, yeah.
But I won't name them.
Yeah. There's always a bridezilla out there.
And this was a million years ago. Everyone is so nice. It's such a big event for them. And because I've been doing it for so long too, I have my ways to relax people. And so in the end, it's great. I actually really like doing weddings. We do small weddings, less than 100 people. And it's always an honor to be a part of someone's special day.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine, being basically a caterer and a wedding planner, I think, as well. And a lot of stress involved to try and make everything so perfect for the perfect day.
Yeah, because you want them to be so happy.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be responsible for messing up someone's day.
Yeah.
And so there is like a little added extra pressure rather than just like a dinner that I'm doing at the restaurant or at Village to Table.
Right.
But it's always been fine.
Yeah.
And like I said, people are so nice.
Yeah.
People are really nice.
Yeah. Well, now that you mentioned it, Village to Table. So you're catering part of your business and Village to Table, it's under a brand called Chilies and Chocolate.
Yeah. Well, the catering's not, but
the catering's not.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but that's okay. Yeah, so Village to Table is an extension, is basically part of the Chilies and Chocolate Cooking School.
Okay.
And so it's just an event. I mean, that's what I do. I plan events, and it's a dinner we do on Friday nights. We've been doing it since 2016, so quite a while now.
Yeah.
It's an 8-course tasting menu with wine pairing. Yeah.
I love the Village to Table dinner, as you know. I've been out to it many times, and, Jane lives in a village, as she was saying, but it's over a river, and our Village to Table dinner is held there. So you're on a table under a big tree overlooking the river. And then, this is what I love about it is the Oaxacans have been pretty cut off from the world in the way because of the mountains and the ocean. So, as you explained to me, they learn to cook and use what's around them. So that's what your class is, or not your class, pardon me, your Village Table dinner is all about, is experiencing that. And I've definitely eaten some things I wouldn't have probably eaten anywhere else. So you got to be a little bit adventurous to go to your village.
Trusting. You have to be a little trusting.
Trusting is what it is?
Trusting of me.
Yeah.
So it's a dinner that we put together using pretty much ingredients all from mostly the village. Sometimes I have to have a little something from outside or nearby. But yeah, and see what can we do with all of this. Yeah. And I love that no nonsense of cooking in a village. I used to really love Little House on the Prairie. So this is sort of like similar to that. Like, what do we have around us? We have to feed people. What can we use? Yeah. And then I just, all my years of reading cookbooks and food magazines and food shows, like, how can I make this more interesting or do something different? Or, what if I mix this and this? And so Village to Table, for me, out of my activities, is probably my favorite activity to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think me too. It's on Fridays, so it's nice to get a good group of friends or family or people together and head out there. And you usually handle a minimum of 8 people or something like that?
Yeah, we've done them even for like 6 people.
Okay.
Yeah, we've
done
for
how
6.
Many can you handle up to?
So I think our largest group has been like 25.
25,
maybe. But the average is like 12 to 16. Yeah. If you come to a Village Table, you're going to be probably around 12 to 16.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a good number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears a little bit now. We're talking a lot about work and a little bit about education and schooling, but what about just for fun? What does Jane Bauer like to do in Huatulco or in her village for enjoyment?
Well, I like to go for a morning swim.
Oh, yeah.
I like to do yoga. I like to go for a drink with friends. I like to cook at home. Even though I work in a restaurant, I love to have friends over for dinner.
Yeah. I love it when you have me over for dinner too.
I don't know. I like cooking at home. Yeah. So that would be my, if friends are like, hey, let's go for dinner. I'm like, I would like it if everyone just come to my house for dinner. I like planning a meal. Yeah. And, I like to do that. I like to go walking. I love walking in the woods. So low season for me is often like planning a trip that involves some sort of hiking or walking.
You often go hiking. Yeah. Yeah. I've done some good trails.
Yeah. I like that. And I guess that's it. I don't watch Netflix, have a glass of wine.
Yeah, you read a little too, I think.
I like to read. Yeah. I'm a big reader. Yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful life. Well, I think, looking at all your business of kind of saving the best to last, and I think maybe well, I thought it was maybe your favorite, but maybe the Village Table. But you also have an amazing cooking class.
Oh,
which is also out at the Zimmerman.
Yeah.
So,
well, I view Village Table and the cooking as almost like connected because it's just like another activity, but it's a little different. But it's at the same place, right?
It's at the same place.
But yeah, I mean, I love teaching cooking because for me, I'm not just teaching a recipe. I'm sort of teaching the questions that went through my mind when I had those first experiences here with women in their kitchens. I'm answering them for people. So like, why are we doing this the way we are? Why are we eating this? How did this come about?
Right.
And I think, learning just a recipe is great, but when you understand the context of food, historically and geographically, it just like blows it wide open on not just our history, but our history as a people, all of us.
Yeah.
I love talking about, pre and post colonial eating habits. And it's so interesting that when I think back to what I learned about, the explorers in Canada, I always say, being from Montreal, which is in St. Lawrence, it's always depicted as like 3 ships coming down the St. Lawrence, and they come across like, 12 teepees. And that's like sort of how it's presented. Like, that's it. And then all these people died or, were treated badly. But you don't even get this concept of like the vastness of it. And the thing in Mexico is it's much more present, that history. And when you think about, when the Spanish arrived to what is now Mexico City, and it was bigger and more majestic than a European city at that time, it's mind-blowing. Like we weren't taught that.
Right. Yeah.
And the foods that came with the people that came over, and the foods that they had never seen before, it's just wild. And it wasn't that long ago, like 400 or 500 years, how our diet has changed. And that when they arrived, we think of it very much like Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. It was just all land. Like it was just all one. And I think we lose sight of that, especially, the way things are today.
Yeah. Yeah. Good perspective for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Jane, your cooking class is amazing. I know so many enjoy it. And, it's always one part about the food, and you get to eat what you cook.
Yeah, of course. We make delicious food. It's not just like...
But then you also, as you said, there's a really nice history lesson to it. Not that it's boring or dry or anything. And then you also have a nice comedy side to it. So
yeah, because I'm funny.
So I'll say to the men, don't be shy. I think a lot of men are a little bit shy to go, but once they go, they really, really enjoy it.
Oh yeah, we get a lot of men that love to cook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you have about 18 stations.
We have 8 cooking stations for 2 each. So we take max 16.
16 people. Yeah.
16 in a class. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, like the average class, I would say is 8 to 12.
8 to 12 people. Yeah. So you can book her cooking classes out in the village. And I just want to stop and say, if you're enjoying our content, please go below and subscribe to our channel. You can hit the notification button so you get alerts every time we post a new video. Today I'm here with Jane Bauer, Huatulco food empress, as she shares her life and shares, being basically a pioneer as a foreigner to this area. As I said at the beginning, Jane, lots of admiration towards you, and really been enjoying just being able to be your friend and
thank you,
and sharing all these stories. So if you were to give advice to our listeners out there, what should be one thing they would consider if they were moving to Mexico, and say moving to Mexico with kids? What would that advice be?
Okay, I have a motto for myself, and I actually tell this to people sometimes, because people ask me at the restaurant, like, what's the secret? And for a long time I said, you just don't leave. Like, that's the secret. Like, you're here, you're having a great time. And you start planning, like, forget it. You just don't leave. And anything that you need to take care of, you could just take care of it in this day and age.
Right.
And I would say my life motto is a little bit like, over preparation is procrastination.
So just do it.
Just do it. Like if you wait till everything is perfect, it's never going to happen. And as a parent, like if you wait till, I don't want to pull them out of school, or this isn't right, or I got to wait for this, like just do, if you really want to do it, you're just going to do it. People are going to do what they want to do. Some people maybe just want to fantasize about it and feel bad that they don't. I wish I lived in Mexico. Well, you can. Yeah. It's just
make that decision.
A succession of choices.
Yeah.
And, when I moved here, as I said, I didn't speak Spanish. I didn't even come back on that second trip with a Spanish-English dictionary. Like, that is how unprepared I was. And that was a really good thing in the end, because I wasn't constantly with my head in a book. I was talking to kids, making a fool of myself. Like, don't be afraid to look stupid. That's the secret to learning language. And just muddling my way through, like we all are. Yeah. And if you're going to muddle your way through, you might as well do it somewhere nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great advice. Couldn't agree with you more. Starts with making that decision and just going for it. So, well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. TIM, this is Mexico, and we're on the show Made for Mexico, where we help you decide if you are made for Mexico. My guest today, Jane Bauer, my dear friend. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
I am Brent May. Adios.